All right, here we go. The storm is moving in on top of us now. We're talking about the first of the raindrops developing across New England. Hi, I'm Matt Noyce. Good to be with you. You know, so many of you last time really appreciate that not only did you like the video, but you followed our new YouTube channel at 1 Degree Outside. Really appreciate that. Danielle and I really look forward to bringing you great content over the days, weeks, months ahead. For now, of course, we're very much focused on what's coming up over the next 48 hours. So let's go ahead and dive into it and show you exactly what's happening. First of all, it's a large swath of rain that's expanding into the northeast right now. As of this recording, first raindrops are already coming down across southern New England, and you've got snow that's coming down over Chicago. You also have a tornado watch. It's out across the southeastern United States from Georgia running into North Florida, a good testament to the amount of energy that's associated with this storm. On the larger picture, I can show you what's coming together here. You know, you say, is it cold enough to snow in New England? The answer is no, not for everybody, right? It's 45 degrees at Norwood, 42 in Boston. The dew point at Boston is 35 with the wind off the ocean. It's going to rain, or at least mostly rain in Boston. Any amount of snow would be very limited. But you notice in pink the winter storm warnings that are out from the National Weather Service, and that would be across Worcester County, across the eastern slopes of the Berkshires, then running up into northern New England. In fact, in northern New England, the dew point right now at Laconia is 25 with a temperature of 39. The reason I mentioned the dew point, when you have dry air in place, a lower dew point, what can happen is if you add moisture, the temperature will cool. It won't necessarily meet the dew point, but the dew point and the temperature will meet in the middle. So that's really important. The dew point right now in Burlington, Vermont is 18 degrees. In other words, we have enough cold air in place that we are ready to go for a snow event, particularly across northern New England, but parts, again, at least in the higher terrain of southern New England as well. And I'm going to get into that right now. It's amazing to think about it when you look at the current setup with barometric pressure. You've got the storm center over Chicago. And the amazing part to me is that the cold air, center of cold air with the center of high pressure. Look at this. You got to go way up into Canada. I mean, we're talking about on the north side of Hudson Bay is the center of that high pressure. But, you know, air flows from high to low pressure. So it's coming all the way down from high pressure down to what is first the developing or the strong storm in Chicago. But now I want you to watch what's going to happen down by Richmond, Virginia. I'll zoom you in a little bit. This is where your new storm center is going to be taking shape. As we head to this evening, it comes over D.C., starts to pull off Cape May, New Jersey by the time we get to the late evening. And there it is now coming south of New England, making its way over the islands or over the Cape. There's the center of low pressure, 5 a.m. Thursday, 8 a.m. Thursday. Thursday morning, it's coming over Cape Cod. We actually do expect the wind on the Cape to go southerly for a time on Thursday morning, but this is going to rip in a northeast wind on the north side of the storm as it strengthens and heads out east of Boston Harbor to a position over the Gulf of Maine by the time we get to late day Thursday evening. This is a setup for a humdinger of a storm in terms of snow and precipitation amount when you get across portions of Maine into eastern New Hampshire. From the Route 16 corridor running into the Maine Turnpike points northward, not only is there going to be a decent amount of snow that comes down, we think there's also going to be a lot of precipitation. So the problem with that is you get a loading that takes place. It's heavy, it's water-laden snow. It's going to result in significant power outages across the interior, or really even probably right down to coastal Maine, running in through central and eastern New Hampshire. You should be ready not only for power outages, but in some spots you get the most snow for power outages that may last in the course of a few days. All right. Now, in terms of the radar forecast, let me show you how we think things are going to break down with this. I'll take you into the radar forecast for New England and show you the timing on this thing. So we already know from looking at the radar that we're looking at first precipitation that's in place right now, right? But if I load up the duration of the storm, and it may skip a few frames while the data is populating here, but you're going to see it's a lot of steady snow across much of northern New England. Southern New England, if you're south of the Massachusetts Turnpike, you're probably going to be mostly rain. In terms of the time of snow for southern New England, let me back it up just a little bit. Notice when we get to tonight at about 10:30 p.m., the red indicates a mix. You start to get a mix after dark tonight, even down to the Mass Turnpike. It will happen first in the hills, the Worcester Hills, the Berkshires, the hilly terrain of southwest and south central New Hampshire. Watch what happens if we go farther out. Now we're at 2 in the morning on Thursday, 2 in the morning tomorrow. You've gone to snow. Now, Mass Turnpike may be a really wet snow still mixed with rain, but when you get to 495, it's more of a steady snow. But the interesting thing is, here we go into early tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., 8 a.m. I think once we start getting to 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning on Thursday, this is an April sun. It's a fairly strong sun angle, so you're going to be talking about a really hard to accumulate snow once you get past daybreak on Thursday in these marginal areas at 33, 34, 35 degrees. That would be a lot of eastern Mass inside of 495. It may accumulate a little bit longer into the mid-morning when you head into Worcester County. This is the map at 11 a.m. Once you go far enough north, so into a lot of Vermont, much of New Hampshire, except for extreme southern New Hampshire, and then into Maine, you're just cold enough that even with the April sun angle, that will slow the accumulation rate of the snow, but it won't stop it. So you say, okay, how much am I getting? Here's your forecast map for southern New England. I would expect that around the Boston area, it's not much. You might get that flip we talked about in the pre-dawn on Thursday to get a coating to an inch. Once you start getting outside of 95 and out toward 495, it's 1 to 3 inches. Predominantly going to be on the grassy surfaces, but we may get some greasy development that takes place on the roads in the early going on Thursday morning. Then it becomes more of an event as we get into the northern Worcester Hills. Even someplace like Worcester's interesting because you have the airport sitting at about 1,000 feet in elevation, okay? And that probably means you could go 4 or 6 inches of snow at 1,000 feet up. While downtown, while in the valley, you're talking about probably less. And that's why I've got Worcester right on the edge of 1 to 3, 3 to 5, trying to take into account that ramp up with northern extent, with elevation, and that's the case from Leominster running all the way up across the state line. And you can see how your amounts also increase on the eastern slopes of the Berkshires for that matter as well. These areas, both, we'd be concerned about the fact that it is a heavy, wet snow, so you'd be talking about the potential for some increased power outages. And then the other part of this is going to be in northern New England. Check it out. I mean, this is just an epic storm. Ski country, it's amazing to think you're going to get another third big dumping of snow across all of the ski areas, which is incredible. But again, just keep in mind, there is a lot of water content in this snow. Part of the reason that we don't extend the 12 to 15 all the way to the coast, and it may end up all the way to the coast, but the reason that Danielle and I haven't done that is because the thought process that during the day on Thursday, even if it's snowing pretty good, that April sun angle slows the accumulation rate anyway. It may not stop it, but it slows it. If it's overcome by simply the pure sheer intensity, you're going to get that 12 to 15 and 15 plus expanding more toward the coastline as well. So that's one thing to watch. Notice the mountains of Vermont tend to do very well with this thing overall. In terms of total precipitation, and this is the amount of actual liquid that comes from the sky. So I'm saying predicted rainfall on the banner, but really this is just predicted precipitation out of this thing. This is incredible to me. This is where we're talking about the potential for as much as 3 inches of liquid equivalent that comes down. If that happens, you're going to get even higher snowfall totals than what I just showed you, all the way down to parts of the interior southern Maine, Sebago Lake, running up to the Route 16 corridor. That is a ton of precipitation that's forecast to come down. So that's going to be one thing to watch. It's interesting to note. I want to take you back over to the browser and let's get into some of the AI forecasts. So one of the things that we can do, let's see, here it is. So this is really interesting. This is the European forecast model, okay? And this is the regular European forecast global model. What I can do is show you the artificial intelligence corrected. And what it does is, what you're going to see is it really expands the amount of snow across a larger area. Look at this huge 12 to 20 inch contour that comes all the way down, basically almost to Mount Monadnock, and then runs across Route 16, Wakefield, New Hampshire, the entirety of the lakes. So what the artificial intelligence is doing is saying, look, you forget about the fact that we're going to end up seeing what may be, some sort of slowed accumulation during the day. Just keep cranking snow and just keep piling it up. So that is something to watch. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. Wind will be a factor with this as well. Here's the maximum wind gust forecast for during the day Thursday. The worst wind will be on Thursday morning. So that's concurrent with when you've got kind of a widespread snow that's coming down. The concern in eastern Mass isn't because of snow load. It's just because the wind, you can see here, the gusts are going to be 40 to 50, 50 to 60 miles per hour at times on Thursday morning coming out of the east-northeast. That's going to be enough that it may give you some isolated power outages. The Worcester Hills, that is a possibility. A lot of times when you get the snow coming down, that keeps the wind just off the deck. But on the western slopes of the Berkshires, you're snowing hard on the eastern slopes. On the western slopes of the Berks, running up through the western slopes of the Greens, there is the potential to get a couple of gusts over 60 miles an hour if that happens, because the wind is sloping down the other side of the mountains. It accelerates. That could result in some power outages. Same thing at the coast of Maine. 50 to 60 mile per hour winds. You know, it's possible for a little while on Thursday morning we get blizzard conditions that line up along the York County coast of Maine, running inland to Sanford and even Rochester, New Hampshire. That's certainly not outside the realm of possibility. One of the other things I think we need to be cognizant of is the flood concern, okay? So in terms of the amount of precipitation that comes down, We'll be talking about probably some minor river flooding. That's the Charles River at Dover. You can see that pops up here. But actually, the bigger concern to me is going to be coastal flooding. If we go through time, I'm going to start out with the overnight tonight. Your seas are building early Thursday morning. The red is 16 to 20 foot seas just outside Boston Harbor, 13 to 16 feet in the harbor. Cape Ann gets into the 16 to 20, and you've actually got a small area, 20 plus foot seas that's sitting just outside. And as we go deeper into the day, by midday tomorrow, huge area, 20 to 23 foot seas coming into the Gulf of Maine. That's a lot of wave action. You've got a morning high tide. So with that morning high tide, one thing to point out, you look at someplace like Scituate, I'll pop up the graph for you. You do hit 12.4 feet on a morning high tide Thursday. This would be squarely into minor coastal flooding, not quite up to moderate. Hampton Beach certainly screams out at you because we've had a lot of stuff going on at Hampton lately. Hampton gets up almost to moderate. Your 11.8 is your forecast. 12 would be moderate. This is not as bad as the major flooding you've had twice already this year because you don't have the big southeast wind burst that comes in out ahead of it. You know where I think you got to watch? Look down around Bridgeport, Connecticut. This is a pretty big deal. Bridgeport, Connecticut comes to 10.9 feet. Major flooding would begin at 11.2. So the whole south coast of Connecticut is vulnerable here. If this happens, even as it's forecast, if it doesn't go into major and it just stays where it's forecast to be, you're talking about numerous roads that will be closing in Bridgeport near the shore. You talk about Water Street in Norwalk, Connecticut, that'll be under 2 feet of water from Elizabeth to Concord Street. Westport, Connecticut, Campo Beach area, 1 to 2 feet of water on Hills Point and Harbor Road. So it's a pretty big deal along the south coast of Connecticut with that high tide on Thursday morning. Definitely something to be aware of with that. In terms of how we think this storm is going to evolve, again, I think for the most part, we're talking about what's going to end up being a storm that while it ramps up gradually today, it really makes its move in terms of the snow after dark tonight. We looked at the areas that are most vulnerable to that snow coming down. We looked at the areas that are vulnerable to the wind, the flooding, the coastal flooding. Really, for most of southern New England, it's down to like leftover scattered snow showers Thursday afternoon mixed with raindrops. Friday may have an afternoon snow shower, but it's not a big deal. In northern New England, you get these periods of lighter snow that'll linger Thursday night and Friday. And that's why in the snow maps, again, I had showed you through Thursday for southern New England, through Friday for northern New England. So that's the way things look for now. Of course, we'll be eager to hear about your reports. Please do keep in touch over the course of the storm. And if there's any big updates to deliver, we'll make sure to get them out to you. So that's the way things are looking for now. Thank you again for checking in. It's always great touching base with you. Good luck with the storm. Stay safe. Again, be careful with the generators in northern New England. Make sure you keep them ventilated, right? Carbon monoxide is a real danger when you get this kind of snow and you lose that power. Okay, take care, and we'll keep you posted.